I always thought I had a perfect marriage. Emily and I had been together for 8 years, and our lives felt like a well-rehearsed dance. We were both in our 30s, living in a quaint suburb of Seattle, and the spark between us was still there, or at least, I thought it was. But recently, I started to notice changes. Emily seemed distant, her laughter was less frequent, and her phone was always glued to her hand. There were new late-night outings I couldn't quite pin down. I wanted to believe it was just work stress. Emily was in marketing, often putting in long hours. Yet, a nagging feeling gnawed at me, whispering that something wasn't right. One fateful evening, I decided to follow her, not out of distrust, but out of desperation to uncover the truth. That night, Emily told me she was going out with a friend from work, a charming man named Daniel. He'd always seemed a bit too friendly, the kind of guy who could turn heads at a bar. It unnerved me. When she left, I grabbed my jacket and slipped out behind her, following the glow of her taillights. She drove to a trendy downtown bar, the kind with neon signs and live music. My heart raced as I watched her walk inside, laughter spilling out like a beacon. I waited outside, leaning against my car, my gut churning. After what felt like hours, I finally gathered the courage to peek through the window. What I saw made my blood run cold. Emily was sitting at the bar with Daniel, their laughter mixing with the music. They were close, too close. I could see the way she leaned in, her hand brushing against his arm as she spoke. It was innocent enough, but it struck a nerve. My wife, who once reserved that kind of affection for me, was now bestowing it on another man. I felt the heat of betrayal wash over me, and before I knew it, I was stepping inside. The bar was lively, but all I could focus on was them. I spotted them at the far end, and as I approached, my heart hammered in my chest. Just as I was about to confront them, Emily reached out and touched Daniel's hand. It was the final straw. "Emily," I called out, my voice cutting through the noise. She turned, her face a mixture of shock and guilt. "We need to talk." Daniel looked confused, but Emily quickly waved him off. "I'll be right back," she said, her smile faltering as she followed me outside. "What the hell was that?" I demanded, anger boiling over. "I was just catching up with a friend," she protested, but the defensive edge in her voice told me there was more. "A friend you were flirting with?" I snapped back, unable to contain my hurt. "Flirting? That's ridiculous. We were just talking." I couldn't shake the vision of her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled at Daniel. "Talking like that, Emily? It's not just a conversation. You've been hiding things from me." "I'm not hiding anything. You're being paranoid." But her denial felt hollow, and I knew the truth lay buried beneath her innocent facade. That night, I went home and replayed the scene in my mind, each detail sharpening the knife of betrayal. As the days passed, I became consumed by thoughts of revenge. I could confront her, but that didn't feel satisfying enough. No, I wanted her to feel the same betrayal I had felt. I devised a plan, one that would make her question her own choices and the consequences of her actions. I started by creating a fake social media account, crafting a persona that was charming and mysterious. I named myself Jason, a name both common and unassuming. I began following Emily's social media, waiting for the perfect opportunity to reach out. When I finally sent her a friend request, I did so under the guise of being a new friend of Daniel's. I kept the conversation light at first, but as we chatted, I subtly steered the topic toward her marriage. I made sure to flatter her, playing into her insecurities and desires. "You seem like a fun person who deserves to be treated well," I wrote. Before long, she began to open up. "Thanks, Jason. Sometimes I feel like I'm missing out on life, you know? Like I could be having more fun." It was painful to read, but I pressed on, slowly stoking the flames of doubt. Why settle for less when you could have more? There are so many exciting people out there. The more we talked, the more she revealed. She admitted to feeling trapped, her dissatisfaction with our routine life surfacing in every conversation. I sensed she was searching for something I could manipulate. Weeks turned into months, and by the time I felt ready to pull the trigger on my plan, Emily had fully engaged in my online persona. She began to confide in me, sharing her deepest thoughts and frustrations. I carefully crafted my responses to ensure she felt understood, creating an emotional bond that had nothing to do with our marriage. Then came the fateful night. I arranged to meet her at a cafe, pretending to be just a friend. I wanted to gauge her feelings, to see if she would choose to take this emotional affair to the next level. The moment she walked in, her eyes lit up as she spotted me. She looked beautiful yet somehow lost. "Jason, I'm so glad you could meet," she exclaimed, sitting down with an eagerness that made my stomach churn. "Of course, Emily. I wouldn't miss it for the world," I smiled, hiding my true intentions. As we talked, the conversation flowed effortlessly, but I could see the flicker of something in her eyes, a spark that should have been mine. As she laughed at my jokes and leaned in closer, I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. She was falling for the illusion I had created. I decided to push further, dropping hints about how much better life could be if she broke free from her constraints. "You deserve happiness, Emily. Life is too short to settle for anything less." That statement hung in the air like a threat, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. I wanted her to realize just how far she had strayed, and as I watched her grapple with her choices, I knew I was getting close. But as the meeting drew to a close, something inside me began to twist. I could see the conflict on her face, the guilt mingling with her desire for freedom. She looked lost, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. Was I really willing to take this so far? That night, I drove home feeling conflicted. My plan had worked. I had successfully manipulated her feelings. But as I replayed our conversations, a question lingered in my mind. Was my revenge worth it? I realized that while I wanted to teach her a lesson, I also needed to face my own demons. I confronted Emily the next day, laying everything bare. I revealed my secret, my online identity, and the truth about how I had manipulated her feelings. The look of horror on her face was both devastating and exhilarating. You used me," she gasped, her voice trembling. "Yes. I wanted you to feel the betrayal I felt. I wanted you to see what you were doing to us." She looked hurt, angry, and shattered all at once. "You're no better than I am," she shouted, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, I felt the weight of my actions crashing down on me. I had wanted to make her suffer, but in the process, I had lost a part of myself. Maybe you're right, I admitted, my voice cracking. But I had to make you understand what you were risking. Our marriage was worth fighting for. We sat in silence, the tension palpable, both of us reeling from the revelations. It was a brutal truth that shattered the illusion we had both created. But in that moment of vulnerability, something shifted between us. Though our marriage was strained, we both knew we had a long road ahead. Whether we could rebuild the trust we had broken remained uncertain. But I realized that revenge hadn't brought me the satisfaction I had hoped for. It only unveiled the cracks in our foundation, forcing us to confront our problems head-on. As I recorded this story for my channel, I knew it would leave viewers questioning the morality of my actions. Was my revenge justified, or had I crossed a line that could never be uncrossed? In the end, this story isn't just about betrayal and revenge, it's a reminder that love is fragile, and sometimes the fight to preserve it requires facing our own flaws.